Hey everyone, welcome back to another Finding True North. My name's Ryan and I'm joined by
Olivia, and welcome to the 12th episode of Finding True North, whereby we are sharing the pivotal lessons and moments that can help you navigate your career. And Ryan, we have a guest of yours on this web series today. Who do we have?
So I'm very excited to have Matt Long come and join us, who's a lean agile leader and scrum master at Swisscom. I know Matt from university, and well, when I was at university, because I looked up to Matt. He went to university, but I think it was my first week or so at uni, and they did this like webinar similar to this actually, where they had three alumni come and speak, and Matt was one of those. So I had known of Matt through this. I'd heard about some of the placements that he did. And then I think by the end of my first year, I actually got to meet him in person. I felt like such a fanboy. So it's great to, stay in touch with you throughout, many years now, to have you join us in the series. So before we dive into it, Matt's going to do a bit of a presentation, but then we have time for Q&A at the end. If you have a question at any point, pop it in the comments, or we'll be using slido.com later on, and we'll get to the questions at the end. So I'll pass it over to you, Matt.
Great, thank you very much, Ryan. It's amazing what's happened over the last few years and how we've come to this, and great to also be with Olivia. But yeah, so hello, good evening, but also good morning, good afternoon, if anybody watches this on the recording. So my name is Matt Long. I am now a lean agile leader and scrum master at Swisscom over in Switzerland. And over the next sort of 15-20 minutes, I will be sharing some of those sort of lessons and moments that I've had over, I guess, my career over the last, I guess you could call it 10 years, and how that sort of shaped and what I've learned from that, and seeing whether I can share some knowledge onto you. To help you also navigate through your careers. So I'll quickly just talk about some of the values, a little bit about my story, and then just giving my sort of vision and some takeaways. And I'd really appreciate some questions that we can address at the end. We'll also have a poll as well. But let's jump in. The first things first, just some key values. I guess I can almost summarize the presentation today, is through these 4 things. And I've seen some of the other talks from this series as well. And I find that we've all gone through very different journeys along the way, but there's often a lot of common sort of feelings and skills and sort of tools that you can put in your toolbox along your travels in terms of what you take with you along. So for me, number 1, it's future proofing. If we're looking even right at the start of your career, if you're still back in school, the subjects that you want to take, maybe you want to go into college, degree, or go down the whole educational track, or just find a career that you are really passionate about. It's also about whether it's future-proofed in the future. Is the role that you're going to take, or the idea that you have, will it bring you something, in addition to just future-proofing, but the ambition as well, but also the energy that you want to take with it? Because again, it's never as easy as you think it is. But if you're really stood behind something that you truly believe in, but also works in the society and the communities that we live in, then that's a great thing to have with you. For me, it was about I also grew up as a musician. Would that have been a career path for me? Maybe, but I also had a passion around technology and also people and business. So for me, it was how to find a balance between the business and IT, and maybe I can continue my music on the side as a hobby, as a subject that I can use in my spare time. So future-proofing. The second thing, as I quickly mentioned, ambition. Will the path that you take be challenging, yet rewarding? If it wasn't challenging, you so easily come complacent, and you just lose the energy in the direction that you want to go. Yet you want to have something that's challenging enough, that drives you, that you learn something new, you meet new people, and you can take that with you for the rest of your life. And again, if you want to change path, that is cool. If you don't know which path to take, that is also fine. So long as you've just got this idea in your mind of the way you want to go, then go for it. The third thing, though, is patience. These things take time. Have patience with it. Don't worry where you are today, but being able to take a craft, a skill, it takes many, many repetitions, time, and practice. Just in the same way now in my role as a Scrum Master, where I'm supporting development teams, building software, hardware, but things that our customers can use, it takes time and practice to be able to get things right in the right direction. But in the world that we are today, things are continuously changing as well. But yeah, just like trying to ride a bike or learning an instrument, you know, you can't just pick it up and be a whiz. Maybe there's a couple of exceptions out there, but nevertheless, the vast majority of us, we have to take time and practice and repetition to get to where we want to be. So have patience. And the fourth thing is sparking joy. So will my decision now that I do spark joy in the future? It's a Marie Kondo quote. So if anyone's been on Netflix and seen how amazing Marie Kondo changes and supports people in terms of how they keep their homes tidy, it's how they can spark joy in the things and the items and belongings that they have. So what can spark joy for you in terms of your career and your passion, or maybe making your passion a career? So putting those four things into it as well, I just want to summarize, I guess, my career, but also some key pivotal moments that effectively helped build those paving bricks into the direction that came apparent. For me, it was finding this balance between business and IT. I enjoyed getting deep into tech, but I didn't necessarily want to become a pure DevOps engineer or developer. But at the same time, I didn't want to get down into the economics side of business and just looking at project management, spreadsheets, and that sort of management side of things. For me, it was about how I can bridge the worlds of business and IT, which traditionally have been two very different things, and how they come together. And coincidentally, in the last 10, 20 years, that's becoming much more of a thing now. And so when I was looking, back when I was doing my A-levels, at the time I was doing economics, computing, of course, the business IT, but also geography, because that was also something I enjoyed doing, was where do I find the balance? And I was looking through, I wanted to go to university. That was something that I decided I wanted to do. I looked at geography and things like that, but I was looking for also IT management degrees. And there was one particular prospectus. It was in fact the Exeter University prospectus, because I also loved Exeter as well. That there was this logo on there. At the time it was eSkills, but now it's the Tech Partnership degrees. I thought, okay, this is different. This has got a logo. Why is that different? So, I mean, there have been other alumni from Tech Partnership degrees as well who have been on this series as well. But it's this whole community of other universities, and it's employer driven. And for me, that was perfect, because it was, okay, we're trying to build up skills that would allow us to fit in an organization after a few years at university, but also gave me the opportunity to meet other people, other employers, get insights, and so forth. So it became really, really rewarding through those 3 years, rather than just sitting down, reading books, doing exams, and then becoming a graduate, and then going, well, I've not got any work experience or any sort of tangible things I can have a conversation with. But before that even happened, I didn't achieve the grades that I wanted. I flopped my A-levels for one reason or another. So I was a bit lost. I didn't really know where to go, because I suddenly realized that those 5 options that I wanted to go for were no longer a question. I simply didn't meet the mark. So coincidentally, and you often hear the term, it's about who you know and not what you know. I actually believe that you need to know something in order to be credible, but it's also how you present yourself with people and how you can network and establish contacts. And actually, I established a contact at Exeter University at the time. It was the course director, Satya, and we just got talking. And so I kept hold of his business card. And when I didn't get the grades I wanted, I gave him a call. And for me, that was a huge pivotal moment, because it turned out that he wasn't even going to be there if I had passed my A levels and gone down to university. So we had a chat, and he was actually moving to Greenwich, still doing ITMB, and Greenwich were one of the founding universities who support the ITMB degree, IT Management for Business. And he said, well, your grades meet the criteria over here, so let's go through the process, and we'll see you in September. And after that phone call, a few forms and UCAS and things later, there I am. I've got my place at University of Greenwich, studying the degree that I want to do, and still being a part of this amazing community. So again, it was just that one single phone call that changed my future, in essence. So I had 3 fantastic years at university. I got to meet a lot of great people. Then we had the events as well. And coincidentally, and again, this is sort of one of those pivotal things, that because I went to Greenwich, IBM at the time was starting to trial an exclusive partnership with the Tech Partnership to have effectively 3 or 4 of their students to have an internship placement at Wimbledon for 3-4 years to support them in their rollout of technology across the Wimbledon site. And they were trialing that with only London-based universities at the time, because that was just the way they saw it, just trying to see how it would work. So at the time, it was just UCL and University of Greenwich. So coincidentally, I was then able to apply for that placement. Of course, I had applied to other placements, again, other great organizations I really wanted to work for, but I didn't get there. And again, you can fail and miss opportunities, but something will always come up if you just keep persevering and going forward with it. So I had IBM for 3 years there, and then I graduated. And then when IBM found out that I was moving to Hewlett Packard, they locked me in a room at Wimbledon for a short while. But no, it was all good. But I then moved on to Hewlett Packard and became a technical consultant. So again, I applied to so many organizations. There was one particular organization that I had a real passion for joining. I won't mention them now, but I had a really good onboarding, got through several stages, and then I missed the mark at the final hurdle. I was gutted, but nevertheless, kept my options open. Again, a lot of the organizations that I applied for were those that I'd established connections with through my tenure at university. But I became a technical consultant. Why did I choose a large organization versus a small organization? Because again, I had the option there was to really see, okay, I guess you kind of got this safety net, but you have this huge organization of very skilled people who, and you can share a lot of experience, and you also have a lot of diverse opportunities. So for me, whilst at Hewlett Packard and then Hewlett Packard Enterprise, I got involved in so many different customers of all different industries, from banking and finance to insurance to healthcare to logistics to telecommunications. So it gave me a really broad overview of perhaps there was a particular industry that I also wanted to work in. Because again, I'm only 21 at the time. Where could my career take me? I knew, again, I want to be somewhere in business and IT, and I was supporting lots of customers, understanding their requirements, their needs, and how they would effectively then have a solution that we can then provide them. But along that journey was this transition from the traditional project management, or what we would in software development waterfall, where you have your requirements to your design to building out the necessary actual development of it and writing the code, to testing, quality assurance, to releasing. You have this sort of waterfall effect, but transitioning that to the movement of Agile. So an Agile way of working, and it wasn't just within teams, but whole organizations as well. So how can we do all of these things from creating some sort of idea to developing it, testing it, releasing it, within a matter of, say, 2 weeks, what we call a sprint. And so I was supporting a lot of organizations in that space, and that got me more in terms of bridging business and technology. And then it was from small teams to whole organizations and how to scale Agile. And there are several frameworks out there, one of which is the Scaled Agile framework. And that was something that we as Hewlett-Packard were also supporting, and how I then got into the world of Agile. But little did I know that earlier jobs that I had, and in fact my first job was a Laser Quest technician. I say technician, we were, I was supporting all the things, but actually in terms of how we were fixing stuff, how we were finding ways of improving, it brings a lot more, it suddenly triggered a few things in my mind. So actually, that was what we were doing back then. But this was much more of an official thing now. So as that was continuing, I also moved into a European role, and I spent more time in Germany, France, Switzerland. But coincidentally, and again, another pivotal moment was meeting people, but meeting whom is now my fiance. So Nora was actually studying in the UK at the time, and we met. And then that set my career on what could be a complementary track, in the sense I was working a lot in Europe, so maybe I could balance the two. But actually, I decided that for me personally, that moving to Switzerland was a really cool opportunity. But how I could take my experiences through my career and seeing how I could bring that to Switzerland, and it wasn't easy. And in fact, I tried to relocate within Hewlett-Packard, but it didn't work out. And then so we had to make a decision as to whether I went back to the UK or whether I go my separate ways. And I took the jump. And fortunately, I had support around me. I jumped into German classes because the part of Switzerland that I live in are predominantly sort of German-speaking, Swiss German. And I was applying for jobs there. And coincidentally, I was then scooped up a few months later by Swisscom. It was just a temporary contract role for 6 months, but I was going back into the Scaled Agile framework side of things as a Scrum Master and as an Agile coach. And I had 2 fantastic years there. And then along came a new opportunity, and again, pivotal moment, where I wasn't actually looking for a new job, and the guy that it was through a friend, and we got talking, and it turned out that we were on a very similar timeline. This was earlier this year, where before Corona, it was we were both going to go traveling for a few weeks, and we were both leaving pretty much on the same day. So within the space of a week, it's gone from a couple of interviews to signing the contract, and here we are today. I can go in a lot more detail around those things. I'm happy to talk about those in more Q&A, but that sort of wraps up where I am today, and I'm having a fantastic time out here as well. So never did I think, looking back 10 years or 3 years ago, that I'd ever think that I would be working and living in another country. So I talked about some pivotal moments. This was actually a picture from New Zealand, where I was early this year, just before Corona brought us home. But there's a great quote from Albert Einstein: "Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important things you do not stop questioning." And you can take that away personally, but it's also something that we do in the Agile world of software development and business these days as well, where we need to look back, we need to retrospect, we need to see, okay, what worked well, what didn't work well, and more importantly, what can we learn from it? And we take today, we enjoy it, and we keep on hoping, and we move forward with a vision in mind for tomorrow. And we always have to question those things, because there's no set path. We have to just sort of navigate our way as we go. I appreciate I'm probably going a little bit for time, but we have a poll, and Ryan, I guess I bring you back into this.
Yep, so to participate in the poll, go to slido.com and use the code FTN to join. And the question is, looking into the crystal ball, how clearly do you see your future? And you've got 5 options there. My whole future is already mapped out. I have a vision, and we'll figure it out. And we'll figure out how to get there. I have a vision, but don't know how to get there. I'll take each day as it comes, or haven't even thought about it yet. What we'll do is we'll revisit the answers to this poll at the very end in the Q&A.
Great. So should we keep this up for a couple more seconds just so people can quickly scan the QR code?
The details are on the next slides at the bottom, so you'll still get the code FTN, so we can move on.
Excellent. Okay, so just remember FTN. All right, cool. So it's not on this slide, but I know it's on the next one, so I won't spend long on this one in case anybody missed it. But so I try to summarize my vision, and for me, this is personal to me, but it's how to empower and enable people, teams, and communities to solve problems and achieve what they do best in the rapidly evolving world that we live in today. And doing it, we're having fun also. So you can apply that in terms of my role, but other people can also take that away. It's really about being a servant leader. That is also what a Scrum Master by definition is, in terms of I'm not their boss, but I'm there to support them and how they may have some problems, they may have some challenges, but how can we together find ways of solving those, but also finding new ways and better ways of working to deliver great products and services. So again, the poll is now back on the bottom there, but I've got 3 recommendations on turning worrisome outcomes into successful power moves. So going back to my first pivotal moment with my call, I've thought about it, and I was like, should I make this call? And in fact, the call that I made, I was early to a friend's celebration party for having completed our A-levels. It hadn't started off yet. I hid away into a room and I just made a quick call, and that decision affected the whole future. And in fact, had I left it 24 hours later, I think I would have missed that opportunity. So don't wait, make a call, reach out to people that you know, see what options there are, and who knows, maybe something can come of it. Again, asking questions, never stop asking questions. And there are never any silly questions. Even today, you know, where I'm with lots more, perhaps, I'll put it politely, older people. Obviously, I'm not in university or anything like that, where we're typically around the same age, but there's still to this day, people go, silly question, but there are no silly questions. I guarantee there'll be other people, say if you're in a call or something like that, they're all thinking the same thing. They're just not, you know, making any noise about it. But it helps us to have a better common understanding. So asking questions, and who knows, maybe there's an opportunity there. And look, we're in a really difficult situation right now. And again, it can change everybody's plans. And I mean, for me, fortunately, I had a new opportunity to go into. I know many people haven't been so fortunate. I know several people that are still in dire difficulties at the moment. But where you are now is okay. We can learn from it and we can adapt to it. And it's amazing what some people are doing today, where they've just had an idea, they found a niche, and they're going with it, or doing something completely different. That's also totally cool as well. So where you are right now, we're all okay. So to summarize, and before we jump in, I've skipped 3 takeaways. So first things first, have an idea of the direction you want to go. Maybe we'll see what the poll says in terms of everyone on who's live with us today. But have an idea of the direction that you want to go, and adapt with change. Build the path as you go. It's so difficult to be able to build that path out, and you're so set on it that it's really difficult to try and flex a bit if you need to. And you'll be amazed at how things can come back around again, and you may end up in a better position than perhaps you thought of. And third thing, be happy as you go. Live for today. Don't feel like that, you know, your goal's all the way over there and that's when I get happy, or when I'll be happy. No. Be happy as you are today, and then we'll see, and then just see how things go. Learn as you go and see where it takes you. So that wraps up the slide. So I'm really excited to be able to open up now for a bit of questions and answers. So I guess, Ryan, Olivia, I guess I'll let you moderate that session.
Sorry if I interrupted there. It froze my end, and I thought it was I thought it was you, so I don't know if I interrupted you mid-flow or if no
Nope.
one even saw that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matt, for doing that. Just a reminder, if you want to ask a question live, then you can do it either through the comments section or through slido.com using the code FTN. We've got some that have already come in, and
Excellent.
I think actually maybe we take the poll first, because I think it's a really interesting question.
Let's do that.
So the results at the moment, we're getting responses on, we have my whole future is already mapped out. We have at least one person who is very thorough and mapped out their career. Also, I have a vision but don't know how to get there. But we've also had a question which links to it. So
okay.
I want to work for myself but don't have an idea or don't know how to get there. It's risky. Should I take the safer option of working for a big company? So I've just thrown out a load of things there, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, so we'll break it down a little bit. So in terms of having your future mapped out, that's all cool. Just be aware that coronavirus or something like that can happen. It completely turns your world upside down. So just be careful. That's all I'll say about that. Again, having something in your vision set out, fantastic. It's really good, and that can also change. And you can figure it out as you go. Maybe you just know a few steps, maybe one horizon, but we'll see as you approach different horizons at that point. So the question, you may need to remind me, but there's the bit about the safety of moving to a large organization as a starting career. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually have a friend who's like this, who knows that they want to be their own boss, do a startup themselves, but just don't know how to get there. Obviously, it's risky, and they're saying, should I take the safe option first of working for a big company?
Yeah, so it's a really, really good question, and I know people that have gone down both routes. I think to be able to go out and do your own thing, it's brave, it's ambitious, and if you've got the passion, the time, the energy, and you can also take the risk. So you haven't already got a mortgage on the house and you need to pay the bills, but maybe you've got some investment or sponsors. Then by all means go for it. What I funnily enough, one of my theses when I did my dissertation, it was on small enterprises or micro enterprises, organizations of less than 10 people. And what I found was staggering was that 99% of those organizations do fail within the first sort of couple of years. So there is always inherently more risk, but it could pay off. Now, there are others who perhaps have gone into slightly larger organizations, and I wouldn't say necessarily it's the safer option. Obviously, there's less risk on you as an individual, but it does give you a wider wealth of experience and skills, and also an opportunity to be mentored and shadow whilst you also on a salary as well. So and at the same time, once you've perhaps built up, and it's also great for the experience, and you can see what works and what doesn't. Maybe you've got a side hustle as well. I also know people that work full-time for a global organization, but they have a secondary business. I mean, of course, you need to have various approvals in place to make sure that it's not competitive or it's in breach of your own contract. But also that can also work as well. So for me, I've gone into a smaller organization with Swisscom, which is, I say smaller, it's less than 1,000 people, but now I've gone back to 20,000. And for me, that was quite a big shock again. And there's obviously a lot more connections and things you have to play around with. So there's a lot more complexity to it. But you really got to put yourself first, and you've got to try and get that support. There'll be some great people out there for sure, but it's really up to you to say, this is what I'd really want to do. This is my passion. So whether it's in the organization or outside the organization, have mentors, meet up with them over coffee. Obviously, maybe digitally. Now we've got the technology to be able to do that as well. And just see what your options are. But yeah, so there's a slightly longer answer, but I hope that answers your question.
I have lots more questions, but I'm going to let Olivia ask some from your end as well.
Sure, okay. Well, first of all, Matt, thank you very much for giving this great talk. And I think
You're welcome.
it's great timing. We've had guests who've been on Friday to North, but also audience members who are interested in the world of business and agile, but of course not sure where to start.
Sure.
And I have two questions, but I think I'll probably start with the first, because the first is about your pivotal moment.
Yep.
So, of course, you know, in life, we may have that very famous phone call, whether you're calling someone really important, whether you're on a game show like Deal or No Deal, or
Yeah.
even if you are trying to win lots of money, like who do you want? You know, what's the TV show called? Do you want to be a
Deal or No
millionaire? You
Deal.
know,
Yeah.
there's those really famous phone calls, and you had one that propelled you into university life. Now, I just wanted to ask a question because, of course, you know, you were attending this party. What made you think that you calling up this person who you probably only met once and had email
Yeah.
correspondence with, but had the power to like help you with your university situation? Was there something like in your mind thinking, this is something I need to do and it's going to work, maybe?
Yeah. So I think what I went immediately to my family and I said, look, what do I do? Because at the end of the day, I was something that I was so set on. I had that fixed idea that I was going to go to Exeter and I was going to do ITMB, and that was going to be my next 3 years figured out already. And then maybe I get a job and hope for the best. But I asked around, and in my head, I was thinking, okay, what are my options? You know, do I go and redo my year again? Do I just do something completely different? Do I, you know, I'm sort of a bit of a loose end. And so one of the ideas was, okay, well, maybe I give a call, but it's like, oh, but you know, there's going to be loads of other students out there that are going to be doing the same thing. It's just like in the recruitment process, you know, and you want feedback if you get like that automated rejection email, which they're always horrible. And then you never get a response back necessarily, even if you ask. But it was just out of luck. And I think I got there and I'm thinking, well, all these other people are celebrating. I don't really know what my options are yet. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. And I don't know, I still don't really know where that sort of, yeah, I think it was just the pressure of everything going on. I was like, it's now or never. So let's just do that. And yeah, here we are.
Well, it's a very big change, as you know, exam days are a very is a day full of anticipated pressure and anticipated expectation. There's not just you know, who studied towards something very important, that we're competing with so many people all over the world in some cases, or country, but you also have people who look up to you and family. And when things do not work out as planned, because of course that happens to every single one of us, whether it's a compilation of grade or just that one that it makes the difference, it's about what do you do next. And I think what's really commendable about you is that you thought, okay, well, I'm in this situation, I'm going to reach out to family and friends, say, okay, well, this has happened, take advice and say, okay, what am I going to do with that situation? Because ultimately I'm in the one in control. And I think it's really commendable that you turned that pressure into a powerful move. It could have gone very differently, and look where you are now. I think it's very admirable. So yeah, I think it's really cool.
It's really interesting talking about this as well. 10 years on from that. I mean, it was around this time 10 years ago that was happening. So it's really good also retrospectively to have this discussion as well and to share that and get that feedback. So it's really appreciative. But yeah, you're in control of your own career, your own destiny, I guess. But yeah, things don't always work out, but sometimes they might just. So it's worth taking the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Joey, actually, one of the things that in my head made you a bit more approachable to talk to was the fact that you went to Greenwich, and I live not far from there. So I was like, oh, Matt knows Greenwich. Like, I'll talk to him about like the area or something. Like, that's my way, like my opening. So it's just funny. If you had gone Exeter, I'd have been like,
what? No, and I also know ITMB graduates from Exeter. They're also great people as well. I wouldn't judge that, but you've raised a really good point as well. It's trying to find something in common with someone, particularly when you're meeting them for the first time. And it's the most, I can't do it. I mean, I've gone to meetups and things as well. I've got to throw myself in there, but my fiance does a far better job at it. She sometimes comes to the events, introduces people, and said, "Oh, hey, this guy knows that topic." But no, it is about finding something that you have in common, and maybe it is one of those just silly questions where you can just connect over. I'm now with a whole brand new team, so I'm trying to find, meeting them individually, because that's also part of my responsibility. Is how can I help these guys? So I can't help them if I don't know them. And I'm really actually wanting to get really back into mountain biking. I mean, I've got the mountains just down the road, and I connected over one guy who also does a lot of mountain biking. So it's just, and you just click, and you just don't think that you may necessarily have that something in common. It could be something completely random. But going in with something like that, as Ryan said, oh yeah, I live down the road from Greenwich, so let's talk about that. Then that's your foot in the door. And then hopefully you can build a really nice relationship with someone. And hey, just that one conversation, Ryan, and here we are. I'm presenting on the series.
It's actually quite funny because Olivia and I actually met at a fintech breakfast event, and afterwards we just connected over a love of education, and then look where we are now. So
do you know what? And you've actually just reminded me of, I guess it's one of these other pivotal moments, and I completely forgot to mention it with the Swisscom job. It wasn't just a question of someone saying, "Oh, we've got this job. Would you be interested? We think it matches your profile." The day after I was interviewed, I went to an Agile breakfast where they were presenting. Complete coincidence. But I was like, at the end of my call, I was like, "Oh, so I'll see you tomorrow." I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, I'm actually attending your Agile breakfast about how they've been doing their Agile transformation for the last year." And then that afternoon, I got another call and said, "Yeah, we'll see you next week." But so, yeah, pivotal. But it's like, okay, and it's also these things, are these events, breakfasts, meetups. Okay, these things are the digital ones now are actually fantastic because you've got this global organization for a lot of these talks now. So the reach is fantastic, and you can meet some really incredible people. So going to those breakfasts, going to meetups, and just finding something, a topic that you're passionate about, because meetups are for everything from business to Agile to yoga to whatever. So yeah, go out, find them, do it, meet people, ask silly questions.
So a question that's come in around actually your role, what do you like and dislike about being a Scrum Master, and what skills are needed? You kind of touched upon elements of it.
Yeah, and I've met a lot of Scrum Masters over the years as well, and they all have quite a array of skill sets, I guess, and backgrounds as well, because it can really make a difference in terms of whether you've come from a development background, or you've come from fresh out of university. But I know that I can't remember how old he is, but I'm aware there's. So in the Scaled Agile, we the Scrum of Scrum. So like the next layer up, you have what's called a release train engineer. So he's the guy that's like the chief Scrum Master, but looks after, say, maybe 125 people. And there's one who's like 21, 22 years old. Whoa, that's young, but it's just, he's got the opportunity, and he's going for it. But in terms of being, I guess they are skills that are often really good in any organization or role, is taking the time to listen and understanding who an individual is, and understanding that they haven't come from the same background, same career, same life experiences as you. And also emotions can play a part. So it's also trying to understand, okay, why, and people react in very different ways in those sort of situations. I think it's you have to just get this with experience, but just seeing how different people react in different ways to certain challenges, or those sort of things. There's often a debate about whether you need to be technical to be a Scrum Master. You don't. It's really about how you can support people and be what we call a servant leader. How we can help and support. Maybe there's a great there's a PDF that you can download if you just Google like the 7, or is it 8 now, 8 stances of a Scrum Master, and they've got like little South Park characters. It was created by Barry Overeem, and for the sake of me being live, I apologize. I can't remember who else authored that. I think it was just Barry. But it's great. And there's also the anti-stances of a Scrum Master. So what you shouldn't be. So, being the scribe or a secretary or things like that. But it's a mix of being a coach, a teacher, supporting, removing what we call impediments. So just the roadblocks that they have. And just being a mentor to people as well. And you will pick up the skills along the way. It's not just something I'm now a Scrum Master. There's also some great courses out there, through Scrum Alliance, Scrum.org, or even the Scaled Agile framework, where they give you a 2-day overview. But again, you're not the expert after 2 days, but it just gives you the tools that you can put in your toolbox, and maybe you just pick out 1 or 2 of the tools that you need as you go. And again, meetups, you learn how. Retrospectives, for example, you're the facilitator potentially of that, where we look back at the last 2 weeks. Okay, what worked well, what didn't, and what can we improve? And if you're doing that every 2 weeks, it can often get a bit tedious, a bit boring. So there's a whole world of different methods and fun ways, basically gamifying work and challenges, and finding new ways of doing stuff. It can just make things fun, but actually really useful in finding new ways of working and solving problems. So yeah, there's a wealth of skill, but again, you don't even need to be a Scrum Master to practice perhaps being a Scrum Master, or being in an organization as a DevOps engineer or a product owner or anything like that. If you're in a team, whether it's in a sports team or college or school or university, you may have a group project, and you can just work and just break these things down into smaller chunks and just almost simulate how an Agile team would work. But in the simple, and we talk about Kanban as well. We could go on a whole series of these talks now, but it's just visualizing work, and it's basically a to-do list on steroids, where you're just saying, here is my backlog of things to do. Here's my work in progress. Here's my done column. And just breaking those down into smaller chunks. Maybe we assign them, maybe work on them together, who knows? And just breaking those out and then working that through. And that's just an agile method of working. And you can start to practice these things. And it would be great then if you then decide you want to go down that route for a job in that particular place, maybe as a Scrum Master. Maybe you move into the role of a Scrum Master, as I did as a technical consultant. I happened to be on site with a customer acting as a Scrum Master, and that's how I worked my way into that. But you can then bring those up it makes you much more credible to then talk about those particular questions. And because you've actually got experience of doing it, whether you were in a paid job or not.
There's lots of resources that you whizzed through there, which is great actually that this is recorded, so you can follow up and
rewind. What did you say? Let's write that down. Yeah.
You had loads of websites there. Olivia, what was your second question that you had earlier?
Yeah, it was quite opportune because it's actually related to what you just spoke about briefly.
Cool.
So in one of your takeaways, you were talking about, it's important to adapt to change. And I mean, this pandemic is one of the most greatest lessons, but also one of the greatest ways to test anyone or any organization. And in the world of Agile, you were talking about how there are new ways of working and new ways to make the experience fun, so it's not so monotonous. With that aspect, I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about lockdown life, especially starting a new role in lockdown? And what are your opinions on Agile's, I guess, way so far in adapting to the lockdown and the ability to do remote working and ensuring that things are still efficient, but also people still feel engaged? What do you feel about those two aspects?
That's a fantastic question. I hope I can break that down and talk about it. But just to go in terms of the new ways of working, these are actually things that have actually existed for a long time. When we break it all down, there's it goes back into lean manufacturing. So the good old use case is the Toyota production system over in Japan, and how that model that they introduced consequently has been tried to be replicated Ford actually failed in that because they just thought, oh, there's this new way of working. Let's just go and implement it, and it failed because there's a whole cultural aspect of it. It's more about how people work and engage and having a common agreement on these things. But over time, these things have just been taken up. So the Scaled Agile framework is nothing new. It just takes real working practices and lessons learned. And people make mistakes, and mistakes are also fine. It's just how you learn from them. How can let's question those. Why did that happen? How can we prevent it from happening again, maybe, or what can we do to benefit from that? So in terms, and I think the other thing to mention as well is Agile, and the reason why we do it is it's an empirical process. And what I mean by that is, in traditional way, you write down all these requirements and everything's set in stone. That's the way we're going to do it. And then we get to the development and go, well, actually, no, we can't do it like that. It's not technically possible. Or we do all the development and then everything fails in testing. Or not everything, but maybe something fails, something blows up, or whatever. One of the biggest realizations for me, I was consulting for a pharmaceutical. And of course, I'd worked with banks and logistics and telecommunications. And you get a bug. Okay, it may impact one or several customers, or maybe it's just something internal. But in pharmaceutical, if you have like an incident or a bug within your say your life, you have products that are keeping people alive. You could kill someone. And when you realize that actually there are lives at stake in mistakes, then it completely changes your whole thinking about quality assurance. But that's why in Agile there's inherent, well, in the world that we work, there is inherently uncertainty. So it's how can you make uncertainty more known? And it's asking the right questions and trying to do these things as you go. You experiment, you try something, say, okay, let's have a hypothesis. Do we think this will work? Okay, let's go and do it. 2 weeks later, we review it. We say, okay, did it work? Okay, great, let's carry on. Let's do something with that. We've got stakeholder, have had it demoed to them, they're happy, or they say, oh, but could we change this? Like, yeah, of course, because we haven't build up this huge stack of requirements. So it just allows us to adapt as we go. And this is why I think for organizations that have adapted the Agile way of working, they may have benefited, or at least not felt the pain as much as perhaps some more traditional working organizations through coronavirus, because suddenly that's all their plans. There's no one in the office anymore. What are we doing? And there are several organizations out there that have really felt the pinch or have not been able to adapt to change, because there's just this whole spaghetti of requirements and just the technical way in which things are also built as well these days. So we often talk about Agile in just small development teams, maybe of 10 people. But actually, it requires these days organizations to completely move that shift and that whole thinking of moving from command and control to trying to build trust through their people and finding ways as we go. Yes, we still need a vision. We still need a direction in which we need to go. We need perhaps a strategy, but what can we learn from the things that we're doing on an iterative basis? And this is why with Scaled Agile Framework, we have those 2 weeks and we all work to those, but then every, say, 10 weeks, that's also wrapped up in what we call a program increment. So then we bring all the teams together, we do a big system demo, but we also plan together for 2 days. And we say, this is the vision for the next 10 weeks. And we try and stick to that. And things, again, will move. They will adapt. Things won't work. Things will work. But we adapt and we learn rather than trying to fix and trying to squeeze it all in. Because at the end of the day, again, traditional project management also works really well. It just helps if you know everything that needs to be done. And you can also adapt and bring things into those sort of things. So I'm not anti-waterfall at all, but it just allows you to retrospectively look and adapt as you go. So in lockdown, Swisscom, whom I now work for, whilst I was away trying to keep ahead of coronavirus, eventually I had to fly home, even though I had another 3 more weeks left in Australia. I had to miss my best friend's wedding. Although that then got cancelled because of all the new rules that then came into play within hours after that. Swisscom actually put a blog out and actually said, hey, we've managed to release this whole new piece of software whilst everyone's at home. It required a completely different way of working, but we experimented, we tried, and it worked. Things may not go right, but in this case, it worked really, really well, and they were really happy for that. And I think a lot of organizations will look at the coronavirus and see that actually there are new ways of working in terms of more flexible working. Being able to work from home, the more maybe offices completely change as they are. You won't have fixed desks anymore. Maybe some more open, collaborative spaces, because at the end of the day, that's how we achieve things: is bringing people together, finding ways of working, new ideas, sharing ideas, challenging, questioning, and then finding a way together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really interesting times, but things are slowly easing up at least. But fingers crossed, everyone stays healthy, and yeah, we can learn from it.
Talking of new ways of working, I was trying to adjust things in like the company I'm at, and I was like, do you know what? It's a Friday. I've only got internal meetings. I'm gonna wear my Spider-Man onesie, and I'm gonna go on camera. Some people were like, but some people loved it, and then as soon as someone, everyone else does. So that was my alternative way of working.
To be fair, this is actually the smartest. This is the smartest I've been for a while, because again, Swisscom is a bit more casual. I could maybe just wear a t-shirt. You won't believe what I'm wearing underneath. That will never be seen. But no, I'm not going to shock anyone. It's okay. But yeah, you've got to be your own individual. And I've seen it in other talks as well, is that, you don't, yes, you can have your mentors. Yes, you can aspire to be like someone, but be your own person. Everyone has their strengths, everyone has their own weaknesses, but play to those. And just find your individuality. And I think that's so important today as well. And fortunately, we live in a society that we have the opportunity to do that. Okay, it's not easy in some circumstances, but I think finding you as an individual, and you will learn. And I'm still learning about myself, as anybody would. But I think even as you get much later in life, finding new ways of working can often be a challenge, well, because you've been so set in the way. But I think it's also a generational thing that we're just seeing so much change as well. I mean, yes, everyone's always seen change. People have lived through a hell of a lot. But it's those experiences that then justify your thinking and your rationality as well. So yeah, very interesting.
It's also nice just to change it up, because we've all been working from home for so long. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to bring a smile to someone's face just because they won't expect it.
Brian, I love how you're trying to justify this. You put on a Spider-Man onesie.
You could have done it on this. I wouldn't have been disappointed.
No, I have a Christmas one as well. We'll see wherever we are.
Christmas, though.
Are you is it like a Christmas tree onesie?
No, it's really tasteful though. It's a really nice onesie. So keep tuned. Whatever we do in December, if we're at home live streaming.
But hey, who knows? For anyone that's watching these series, maybe there's just one of those series you may find Ryan dressed in something completely interesting and creative. And,
there was another
question.
There's another question that's come in, which I think is really interesting. So how did you navigate moving countries? Like, what are the key things that came to your head? I know someone who relocated to Switzerland, and they said like Swiss German is even like another thing. Like, I have a friend who's German who's like, even Swiss German is like a different thing. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to go into that this session, but yeah, I mean, I never thought that I would ever be living in another country. I think, period. I really enjoyed, as a consultant, I was able to fly in with a project maybe for a few days. I was also fortunate to go to, say, Dublin for almost a year, where I was flying in and out every week. So that was really cool. It gave me a lot of understanding of cultures, things, and they go, oh, that must be really nice. You get to travel a lot, but when you're working from dusk till dawn, you almost. I mean, one time I was in Italy, and you think, oh, wonderful. In fact, it was in Sicily, and you go, oh wow, south of Italy, that must have been beautiful. I was like, yeah, but I was in a room for 3 days training a whole group of people with no windows. So I didn't see too much, but you can get out in the evening and things like that as well. But to go back to the original thing in terms of moving, yeah, I mean, that was a huge decision on my part, and there was a huge risk involved. And I was able to test the waters and to see how things can work and how I can get involved and working with different customers whilst I was still a consultant across Germany and Switzerland and things like that. But it was really when I had to make a decision at that very moment in time as to do I go back to the UK, or do I continue to stay in Switzerland, but as a consequence I need to find a new job. And again, that was a huge cliff to jump. And again, it goes back to that phone call decision. What are my options? Can I do it? Is it feasible? How much time do I have to get a job? Is it even possible for me to get a job? Because of course, me not having any German was a huge issue. I learned German in school. I got a GCSE in German, wasn't very good. But I realized when I came here that actually I'd forgotten all of that. And I actually realized, back having done German classes since, that what I learned in a very small amount of time was what I learned in several years. I mean, the UK education system when it comes to foreign languages is, perhaps not as great as it could be in, say, the rest of Europe, at least, because we're just so accepting of English being this international language. And I've been very fortunate that the business language has often been English. But as soon as I quit my job, I said, right, I'm going to go into German classes and full time. So 8 till 12 every day, Monday to Friday, I was in a German class and I just worked my way through the levels. And at the same time, in the afternoons, I was applying for jobs. I must have applied 40, 50 times. And yeah, it was tough. It was a tough 3 months. I was fortunate enough that I had my partner, and financially I was supported there. I had obviously a few pennies in my pocket to help me get through that. But that was the risk that I was willing to take. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, I have a flight home back to the UK, and I figure out my next opportunity from there. So yeah, it was really interesting. A big challenge, and I'm still learning German. When I went to Swisscard, the organization is German speaking, so all the management meetings, German. It would be exactly the same if you went to France. Of course, you'd be probably more so expected to speak French. But I was in Zurich. That was also deliberate by my partner. She moved up from Bern to Zurich because it's more international. It's the financial capital. You've got the Credit Suisse. In fact, Swisscard is a subsidiary of Credit Suisse and American Express. And they actually had a skills shortage where they couldn't get the people who were German speaking. They couldn't get enough people, so they had to expand their market. So actually what we found was that more and more English speaking people coming in. So it didn't per se give me an excuse, but it allowed things to work out a little bit easier there. And then Swisscom, again, it's a Swiss company, but it's more, thing is, Switzerland has, 4 official languages: German, French, Italian, and Romansh, which is a very interesting dialect. And then you have the dialects of, say, High German as well, so all the Swiss German. And each canton, so county, I guess, each have their own dialect. So they're a little subtle, I say subtle, quite considerable changes in terms of the language. So it makes it really, really interesting. So now I'm in Bern working for Swisscom, and now I want to pick up more of the Swiss German with the Bern dialect, also because of my extended family now are Swiss German, although their English is fantastic. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's every day it comes. But if you're really willing to kick it out, and it's amazing what love also does to you as well. You ride it and you run with it, and that's what you sort of get out of it, really. And for me, it's been a really rewarding 10 years, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens in the years ahead.
I feel like whenever I speak to you, you always give like little snippets of life advice. I remember one, I think it was maybe my first year into working after graduating, and I was just like, do you know what? I'm not 18 anymore. My metabolism's gone. Like, and you was just like, yeah, you need to learn to work and exercise and keep on top of that, because like you're older now. And I was like, you're right.
You've got to look after yourself. And my metabolism just disappeared when I became a graduate. And so I'm now trying to get, well, my partner's trying to get me onto a much better regime of keeping myself fit. And I think that's also really important. Work-life balance is such an important topic today. And I think we need to find a way of bringing that up in a series, because there is so much burnout in people today, and there's so much expectation of people, working those extra hours, working through the nights and the weekends. And in most cases, it's simply not needed. And it's just like, having to work in an office. Coronavirus has actually proven a lot of people that actually that's not actually the case. You can trust your organization to be able to work from home and get the job done. And that's a much more growing thing, even for things like maternity and paternity leave as well. And that's, there's much more consideration around that. So these are often things that people also look for as well now when they're searching for jobs. It's not just about the role itself, it's what can that organization bring me and what is expected of me. Because I've seen people go into roles completely, the expectations were completely false. And it's just burnout, stress, and it's dangerous. And at the end of the day, it's your life. You don't want to allow your work to consume yourself, but you want to find a way to make it fun. But also, you've got the whole world outside as well. So find ways of exploring that, meeting people, finding that hobby, exploring the world. You've got the time to do it, and do it whilst you're young as well, if you can.
Cool. I'm conscious of time. Olivia, do you have anything to ask before we move on to what's coming up?
Well, let me double check if we have any questions.
I'm sure these sessions don't usually go for longer an hour, so I appreciate if anyone's still on the call.
I actually have a question. So we go back to the phone call incident because it's quite pivotal. The advice that you got beforehand, and I imagine before moving abroad, whether for work or for love, you got advice there as well, personally and career-wise. I have a question, which I'm just going to read out, because if I try and regurgitate it,
go for it.
Who knows what it will become? So I'll ask the question directly. What career advice have you received so far that sounded good in principle, but difficult to execute when put into practice?
Getting a job. Getting a job. It's the hardest thing, because you're always expected to have more experience than you're expecting, and you can't get experience unless you get a job. So you're in this sort of catch-22 situation where it's like, well, I can't do what I want to do because I haven't got the experience yet. So how do I get into that? And so I think, it's really difficult. But are there other things that people have said that it's in practice? I think just in general, just being able to solve problems. As soon as you add more and more people to it, it adds complexity. And also in terms of the size of things, the bigger it gets, the more complex it is in terms of how you do things, but also why you do things and what exactly you even do. So, I wouldn't necessarily, I can't really point out any sort of false advice I've been given. I've seen my fair few of presentations like, oh, well, that's really great. But it's just like the whole Toyota production system where, General Motors, I think I mentioned Ford, but General Motors were the ones that then tried it out in America and completely flopped. But obviously they're now still manufacturing cars, but, it's a question of how you learn from it. But yeah, as I said, I've not had one of those sort of things where I go, what, that's crazy. But yeah, I think one of the hardest things is getting a job that you want. And also then, if you even have a job now, how do you get to what you want to do? And I think you've always just got to have that in mind. In a way, you've got to let the people around you know what your ambitions are, because, hey, who knows, maybe they can support you with that. There often are people that will absolutely support you with that. But yeah, don't obviously tell your boss that you want to do something that's completely irrelevant to the business. You've got to work with the organization that you're in. Fortunately, I stand by the values of my company, and that's also why I wanted to work for Swisscom. When I came to Switzerland, it was actually one of my first interviews, and I didn't get the job because I didn't have enough German. And so 3 years on, I've got more German, but again, coincidentally, the teams that I'm working with, it's much more international. So we've got a lot of people from South America. We've got people from across Asia, from across the rest of Europe, who German may not be their native language, but we all have a reasonable understanding of it. So that, and again, technology is also fantastic. We use Microsoft Teams, and in some of the live broadcast calls, you can translate. It translates in real time for up to 6 languages, and you can select pretty much all the languages out there, including Klingon. So if you're fluent in Klingon and you do a Teams call, you can speak in English and it will translate it for you perfectly. If you spoke fluently in Klingon, that would be amazing. But yeah, it's much more inclusive. I think the world of language is something that maybe in the next 10, 20 years is something that is much more accepted, and actually we can have conversations in real time. And I've even seen ITMB projects where students have presented ideas. Maybe Ryan, you were one of them when I was a judge, where there's the smart devices of the future, and actually I've seen some that want to produce real-time translation stuff, and that technology is now becoming much more apparent. And now voice is such an important part as well. So we've got devices in Swisscom, TV devices where you can talk to it. And of course, in Switzerland, you've also got the dialects and things as well. And Google are also, looking at how you can do Zurichdeutsch, so the Zurich dialect of Swiss German. And it's incredible how different they kind of are from German, albeit they're sort of based loosely on those. So there's a really interesting future ahead, I think, in terms of technology, and it will help us to help navigate our careers further. And there'll be people, I'm sure, who watch this, and there are jobs they'll be going for that don't even exist yet. We've never even heard of. I mean, Scrum Masters have been around for maybe 10 years, maybe less, maybe more. I mean, the whole Agile way of working sort of came around sort of at the turn of the century with Agile Manifesto and things. So, these things change, and you've just got to see what's on the horizon and see how you can get there. And if it's interesting, go for it and have fun with it.
I'd be really impressed if Teams can translate into Dothraki, because I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones.
I haven't checked Dothraki, but hey, talk to Microsoft, see what they can do.
Really? I recommend Simlish. I think that will be a great language.
Was that the language from The Sims?
The Sims, Simlish.
Oh.
Yeah.
Product managers for Teams. That's what we should do. We should add that to the backlog.
Go for it. Then you can completely broaden your horizons and go international with it. I mean, we're here in Switzerland now, so hey, who knows? But yeah, the actual whole conversation and how I found out about it was that there was a guy who was Welsh who works for Swisscom, and he was like, "Oh yeah, but I'm Welsh, and I'll happily listen to German or English or whatever." And then we're like, well, if we wanted to, with one of our 6 languages, we could do a live translation for Welsh. It's not perfect, but it does work really well. And I think you get the general gist of the context of what's being said. It also helps me to learn my German further as well. I mean, I can follow a conversation, that's fine, but it can be really useful. And maybe try it out for yourselves. I think Teams is free to try personally. So maybe you can learn by speaking things, and it just gives you whether you do things you won't know whether it's right or not, but unless you knew it. But yeah, maybe it's worth a try.
Cool. So I'm going to let Olivia tell us what the next steps are. What's happening next?
Right. Okay. So I guess if we go to the next slide.
Yes, I will give you the next slide.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, great. So Matt, thank you once again for being part of this project, Finding True North. You've had a wealth of information and wealth of advice to really give our audience today. And as I say before, many of our guests even have had many ideas of what they wanted to pursue, and have also had very different journeys on how they got there. But I think we're all united in the fact that this pandemic has really fast-tracked our level of ambition. And of course, being healthy and safe is of paramount, but it's really made us open our eyes as to what's possible and what the future holds for us. So of course, the next 6 months, we're not sure what that's going to look like, but being optimistic, I do hope that we can all go back to some sense of normality and with a new sense of vision for ourselves. And I think, Matt, the information that you've given today and the guidance will really resonate with a lot of people. So thank you so much for taking a lot of time in crafting this presentation and with the advice that you've had to share today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So with Matt's episode, again, lots of information for you to take away. We're going to be summarizing his presentation in a PDF called an episode highlight document. That's going to be released on Friday. Going to be working with you on that. I'm going to be released on Friday, the 24th of July on the Tech Allies Network website, specifically on the Finding True North webpage, which you can see on your screen now, and in the YouTube description. Funnily enough, you were talking about burnout and being able to balance work and life. We actually have an off-air guest, he's a bonus guest, Danny, who is a postdoc at UCL, and he touches upon work-life balance, because especially when he first started out, I was doing my PhD at the time, and I was like, Danny, you know, what's your work-life balance like? You know, are you resting? He's like, no, I'm working 7 days a week. I'm like, Danny, that is not healthy. But now he's gotten a lot better and he's got a lot of advice. So he's sharing that in his interview that's going to be released on Monday, the 27th of July. And as if it is Face Itself, you also spoke about settling into a new country and what that's like. It's not just about the role that you're applying for, but it's about how the culture fits with you and how you fit into the culture. And next week, we're going to be having Dr. Janavi Basmati with us, and she is a materials specialist, and she is now based in the Netherlands. So she's going to be with us next Wednesday at 5 o'clock, where she's going to be talking about her journey from PhD life into the world of work and moving countries, with love as well. So that's going to be next episode. But yeah, Ryan, have you got anything else to add?
Just that love's now a theme in our series. That should be our next series, actually. Where has love taken us in our careers? A massive thank you, Matt, for joining. It's always great to see you, even if it's physical or virtual. And we'll see everyone at the next episode next week. So, see ya.
Bye.